This is UK synth pop trio Kero Kero Bonito. Now, as I did my research, apparently their name is an onomatopoeic phrase for Kero Kero, essentially frog croaks, and Bonito, a type of fish. It's a cute title that fits well with the overall theme and gimmick. Now, KKB consists of Sarah, who raps and sings in both Japanese and English, and Jamie and Gus, who provide the instrumentation and oversee the production. One of the reasons why I wanted to dig deep into this was because KKB just recently released a new single, which was a watershed moment for the group. The single is a glitchy, noise-ridden pop track titled Only Acting. It utilizes harsher elements, expanding their sound to new heights with sickening sweet experimentation. In recent years, post-2011, anytime an artist experiments with noise elements or harsher production, they often get compared to Death Grips. And for those of you who might not recognize Death Grips is an experimental hip-hop group that has garnered quite the acclaim. And with that acclaim, a fan base rose, given now I was one of those who latched onto them, because they were insanely creative and lighted a fire in the underground hip-hop scene. But part of the fan base has become sort of this hive mind that treats anything experimental as sounds like Death Grips. Not only that, but they treat Death Grips in a mimetic, isn't it so weird lol mentality that's juvenile and just uninteresting. And with those corresponding claims, Death Grips has become the buzzword equivalent of comparing a difficult video game like Dark Souls, a video game series that's infamous for tackling difficulty in a skill-based approach. But in Death Grips' case, that would be the experimental production that's generally considered abrasive and not that palatable. So with that said, these comparisons inherently latch onto that mimetic culture that is devoid of any conversational merit, overlooking the essential elements that make these other titles stand out, critiquing the familiar and not the unique. But I digress for now. Kero Kero Bonito formed in order to create saccharine, positive pop music, and using that as a template, they released Intro Bonito in 2014, which was one of the most uplifting and snarky electro-pop mixtapes I've heard. Let's start off with track 1, Intro Bonito.
Hey, you, take your headphones off. Toss your phone cause the beat is on. Dancing's better when you're with someone, but I guess you wouldn't know if you're home alone. Kero Kero Bonito in the place. Bonito on the mic, Kero's on the bass, hitting you with the international Tanoshi sound that will make the world get down. Come on everybody say Kero Kero, from the countryside to the concrete ghetto.
Already in the beginning is sampling what sounds like Mario Paint, that random air horn that continues to play to the internet as a collective, and a melody that is highly reminiscent of Chrono Trigger's track Determination. But that's only the beginning of their aesthetic approach. Track 1 continues to express sounds that are reminiscent of a Super Nintendo soundboard. Their discography shows that most of their songs have been written using a Casio SA45 keyboard. And like the punchline of many production choices, the Casio keyboard continues to impress, despite its quality. And with that, using fun sound fonts and MIDI modules that give them that distinct retro sound, like that Super Nintendo soundboard that I mentioned, KKB express a very lo-fi glitter aesthetic with the production style, from the music videos to the actual sonic textures in the mix. However, that isn't to say they sound inherently lo-fi in the dynamics. That's where they excel, despite the simplicity and bubblegum pop approach. For instance, they introduced shoegaze elements into a recent single, further expanding their sound past synthpop. This example, among others, proves that there's not only enough variety in the track listing, but in the melody and song structure. One of the members, Gus, has said in an interview, "The band wanted to make the most direct new pop music you could make. Concise, hyper-precise, like no element wasted. So in a track like My Party, it's just bass line, vocals, super clear message, some funny sounds and a tight structure, and that's it. Nothing more needed." And if you want to see more from that interview, head on over to The Guardian, where you can find out more. And in that interview, I think Gus was on to something here. Those three words, concise and hyper-precise, are three keywords that describe their sound. While the instrumentation and song structures are generally simple, it's fine-tuned in such a way that allows for the production and performance to outshine the competition, which they've endeavored to do so on Bonito Generation. Now, this album released in 2016 as their first official studio album under Double Denim Records. And I think it reiterates on what Intro Bonito accomplished, but with a bigger focus on electropop and J-pop fusions, with more upfront melodies while still using the spoken word delivery and quirky synths that saturated the first outing. You can hear less use of samples from 16 32-bit consoles and instead constructing their own original concoction. But of course, what I fundamentally admire about both albums is their ability to craft their songs in a fun and deliberate way. They are absolutely adorable and hilarious, and use charming flourishes to ride home that children's television aesthetic.
You know it. A fingertip placed on the lips which gave a little shh. Maybe we'll talk about that lot now. You see, I'm jacking. All my friends are here, there's just no time for taboo. Can't believe I have to.
As you can see, Sarah uses that disaffected spoken word rap style that switches from English to Japanese on the fly, both of which she is fluent in given her Japanese heritage, a quality that was sought by Gus and Jamie when they were recruiting for KKB. Taking a portion of the lyrics from track 10 on Bonito Generation, Trampoline, you can hear this earworm. It expresses just how sugary candy their approach is with their bright sound.
First you fall down, then you jump back up again. Find your rhythm, momentum is the key. It's so easy, anyone can trampoline. So jumping up, then you can see the whole wide world. When you're ready, mix it up, try everything.
Alright, let's dig a bit deeper into the minutia now. The positivity in their lyrics, while a huge theme, isn't their one-trick pony. There's a cutesy delivered interlude in Cat vs. Dog, track 5 on Intro Bonito, that intercuts the childlike naivete with absurd darkness that's way less kitsch than their usual material.
Dog v cat, your canine trash. There's nothing I like more than a mutt getting whacked with my baseball bat. How'd you like that? That'll stop you barking, startling me in the morning. What's your problem, dog? Cat, go your
And
dog in the
one of the most astounding things as well to note about KKB is their unrelenting knack for being able to take a simple melody and build upon it while taking from their influences and shifting that sound when it's needed. For example, I've mentioned on the first record they used electropop, but their sound is a melting pot, reciting of J-pop with glitchy dancehall and the synth pop blanket as a whole. One of the things that can make or break my enjoyment of an album is the album's cohesion, or how well all the songs fit together. When it comes to KKB's album's cohesion, there's an overarching theme, and they do this in both of their albums. Now, while having a thematic collection of tracks on an album isn't any worse or better, I think, but in all reality it depends on the flow of the songs on the album. For example, Michael Jackson's album Thriller is one of the greatest pop records of all time, and it's strictly a collection of singles. In KKB's case, there's something to be said about trying to link together tracks or albums with that mold of continuity. On Intro Bonito, the last track, I'd Rather Sleep, is a daydreamer's fantasy. 2 years later on Bonito Generation, the first track, Waking Up, is a delightful gem of a sequel, and a pithy nod to the last track on their previous album. While not every track does this in their discography, it's still something to note, and as a narrative piece, that's charming to say the least. The two songs serve as a great lead into the more bombastic production approach that is in Bonito Generation. Another thing that is remarkably engaging about Bonito Generation is the plot. The relatable experience of having to adapt to being a young adult who just graduated and having to deal with the newfound responsibilities, but instead being distracted by the smallest insular task and wanting to have fun despite the looming obligations. Also, that fucking meow sample comes back on Graduation, which was a cornerstone of Intro Bonito. Once again, another element that ties the two albums together, despite their individual motifs and direction, while also keeping in line with that trademark sound. And who doesn't like cats? I like cats. You know, cats are fine. Cats fine. Cats are great. You know, have a cat. Real quick on track 4, Fishbowl from Bonito Generation. You thought Only Acting was the first time they introduced rock instrumentation into their repertoire, but Fishbowl, while short, has enough time to deliver a shoegaze feel, which is pretty heavenly, and exhibits the band's own influences and extending that to their own material. Capping off with one of the standout tracks, Break. It's probably the epitome of their mission statement. A snarky track about taking a chill pill, illustrating not only their sense of humor, but their core message. This down-tempo track inspires a DIY feeling. It has a supportive mentality, urging the listeners to also take a break, relax, and have fun. What they're doing is experimenting with synth pop and proving that there is beauty in simplicity. People tend to dismiss simplicity. Pop music, especially electropop, is dismissed for being basic and blunt, not being taken as genuine, or sometimes mistakenly thinking that pop music is fundamentally vapid and bare in its validity, as if the artist creating pop music in any subgenre or vein is a sign of being dubious and the opposite of profound. This couldn't be any further from the truth. It's all about the execution and breaking down the performance regardless of genre or bias, and what KKB does is refreshing. They're not the first to tackle this style, but Indietronica in the past few years needed a good kick in the ass to let loose and embrace, again, simplicity. Their new single has shown that they're a group willing to experiment and expand the sound of their genre. And with that, I can't wait to hear more of the new direction KKB is going in. Their music has been a good shot in the arm from everything else I'm currently listening to. Now, where is my glitter and inflatable pool noodles, because I need to find a trampoline and take a much needed break.
If you like to lounge, relax, or